Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown. Hello everybody, welcome to Sitcom Showdown episode number 70. Being recorded with me, Jeffers, and hello Steve. I can see you on screen over there on Skype.
Hello Jeff.
Hey.
I'm waving to you, I'm waving to the listeners.
Now hopefully...
Hope everyone's well.
Yeah. Do you want me to just launch into it, Steve, and tell you which one we've picked even though you already know?
Launch away.
Okay. This time around it is...
Or feign surprise.
It's my turn, and I have picked an episode of the Mighty Boosh, and I've picked a Series 1 episode called Electro. And it's episode 7 of Series 1. And so, unlike our usual method, Steve, where I'll tell you what I've picked, we're in the studio together, then we watch the episode. We're now doing this, and you've been given the heads up beforehand and watched it on the DVD I lent you.
Yeah, I did that this Arvo.
Oh, good, good.
Yes, I'm well prepared.
Oh, brilliant. All right, well, that means I can launch into stuff and you'll be able to chip in with witty asides.
Yes, I'll try.
Okay, so the Mighty Boosh was a British sitcom. It went out on BBC 3, not BBC 1 or 2, and that gives you a hint of the level of it right there, if you're a BBC channel snob. Anyway, there were 3 series from 2004 to 2007. As I said, I picked Series 1, Episode 7, Electro. And the 2 main stars of the Mighty Boosh are Noel Fielding, who people might know from Bake Off, and Julian Barrett. This sitcom is utterly surreal. It does not obey the laws of anything, even the laws of comedy, really. It's the exemplar of cult. Any comments so far, Steve?
Well, I was expecting something a bit wackier than we got, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, yeah, carry on.
Now, a bit of background on Julian and Noel. In 1998, they won the Perrier Award for the Best Newcomer, the Best New Act or Best New Comedian, as the Mighty Boosh. As far as Perrier Awards go, or Perrier Awards, you'll know, Steve, that this is from Edinburgh Fringe and stuff like that. So in 2001... the Garth Marenghi crew won the main award, not the best newcomer like the Boosh did, but they won the whole main thing. And then going back in time, in 1999, the year after the Mighty Boosh won best newcomer, the main winner for the whole thing was Al Murray won it as the Gov, the pub landlord from Time Gentlemen Please, which I'm sure will thrill you no end, Steve-o.
Yes, awesome.
The winner of the main Perrier Award prize back in 1991 was Frank Skinner, Steve.
Yeah.
So you'd think hallmark
91.
of quality.
Okay.
Yep. And 3 years later, the winners of the Perrier Award were Leno and Woodley.
So the quality's kind of...
What are you trying to say?
And picking and dipping throughout the early 90s. Okay.
It's all gold except for the Garth Marenghi crew. Anyway, 3 years after the Mighty Boosh won their Perrier Best Newcomer Award in 2001, they got a 6-part radio series on BBC Radio 4. And then eventually, as we know, they went to telly and they had 3 series. Of each series was sort of a bit different, that the setting was different. But anyhow, the show focuses on the adventures of a pair of zookeepers. So you've got socially awkward jazz enthusiast Howard Moon, and you've got the vain, super stylish, fashion-obsessed Vince Noir. And though each episode starts and ends in Dixon Bainbridge's dilapidated zoo, the Zooniverse, the characters of Vince and Howard can often, go anywhere they like for other locations like the Arctic tundra or Limbo or the forest or wherever they're going. Now this
the Arctic tundra.
That's right. There's a whole episode called Tundra.
Why not?
Because it's a surreal sitcom. Now, this episode, Steve, unfortunately, misses out on a few things I thought might have sold it to you a lot better. So, for example, there's a regular character in Series 2 and 3 with Richard Ayoade, and he actually wrote some of Series 3. And
nice.
In Series 1, Dixon Bainbridge, the owner of the Zooniverse, is played by Matt Berry. And he's quite a big figure in Series 1, but he doesn't appear in this particular episode, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the dear listener will know that we've covered good old Matt Berry a few times, like, Sitcom Showdown 44, we covered him in House of Fools, and then in episode 23, we covered him for Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Anything to chip in with before I go on to the actors and characters?
No. No, I'm enjoying this background.
Oh, brilliant.
Because I'm quite ignorant of this show.
Now, Julian Barrett, who plays Howard Moon, the tall one, he said that he initially approached Noel Fielding with the idea of doing a show like The Goodies. And that was actually confirmed recently by Noel Fielding. Anyway, they wanted to make this complete world rather than simply doing a sketch show, but they still wanted to be able to do anything at all. So it's a bit like that, and much like in The Goodies, there's always a song. Now, the thing with this episode, it's about music, so the song appears naturally as part of the actual show, whereas in other episodes, sometimes the song is crowbarred in. Okay. But that's all right. So Julian Barrett and Noel Fielding play various characters, not just the characters they normally play. If that makes any sense. They don't just play Howard and Vince, right? So they'll dress up and be another character, which I'm sure you spotted in this episode.
I think we had one of those, didn't we, in this?
Yep, absolutely. But as far as the main characters go, Julian Barrett plays Howard Moon. And now, in real life, Julian Barrett is a shredding guitar player. And there's several episodes. He gets full marks from me for that one. He's also star of the movie Mindhorn. And in the post-Boosh years, I think it's fair to say Julian Barrett has had a little less profile than Noel Fielding. Whereas Noel Fielding, who plays Vince Noir, now Vince has the gift of talking to the animals, and that's why Howard hired him to work in the zoo. Anyway, Noel Fielding's also been in the IT crowd as Richmond, the IT goth. He was also the monkey man in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which we covered earlier.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I wrote that one down. We covered that one in episode 23.
You're quite right.
It was Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, The Apes of Wrath.
Yes.
Julian was in that one too.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah, he played the Padre in the same episode.
Oh, that's right. So he did.
So
I remember that now.
Noel is the chief ape.
Was he doing wee-wees on things?
Julian is the Padre. Yes, exactly.
Oh, good. Well, I say
that one sticks in your mind.
It does a bit. It does. Now, as mentioned earlier, Noel Fielding is also currently one of the hosts of the Great British Bake Off.
Yes.
And he also had an awesome guest turn as Thomas Morley in Upstart Crow that we covered in Sitcom Showdown 52. Yeah.
I am loving this.
You're exactly right. Oh, now the other characters, you've got Naboo the Shaman, right? He initially works at the Zooniverse gift shop, but when they leave the zoo, he opens up his own shop. Now that's played by Michael Fielding, who I believe is the younger brother of Noel Fielding. Now, as for Bolo the gorilla, who can speak, and he becomes Naboo's familiar, Bolo the gorilla is played by Dave Brown and Peter Elliott. Now, Bob Fossil...
What, does one do the voice and one does the suit, or
no,
how does that work?
One of them, I think Dave Brown was in Series 1, and then Peter Elliott came in and played Bolo for a different series, and they may be gone back and forth. I don't know too much about that. There's an actor, if you can call him that. Let's call him a comedian called Rich Fulcher. And he plays Bob Fossil, whose voice we hear in this episode, but we don't actually see Bob Fossil. But he does play another character in this episode. And Rich Fulcher plays all sorts of characters. But generally, he's the manager of the Zooniverse. And the other main character in this series, as we mentioned, Matt Berry plays Dixon Bainbridge, owner of the Zooniverse. Now, we have covered him in heaps of stuff. All right, so to keep up the pretense, Steve, that you've never seen this before, let's go away and watch the Mighty Boosh.
Oh, awesome idea.
Cool.
Come with us now on a journey through time and space.
To the world of the Mighty Boosh.
Are you aware of jazz music, the movement of jazz?
Why do you keep going on about jazz for?
Because it's the most important art form in the 20th century.
No one listens to jazz. Science teachers and the mentally ill, that's all jazz is for.
You better take that back, you Electro ponce.
Or what?
You better just take it back, that's all.
I won't be taking that back. I'll be leaving it out there for all to see.
Drink it back up.
No, I hate jazz.
You hate jazz?
Yeah.
You fear jazz. Fear jazz, don't you?
No, I don't.
You fear the lack of rules.
No.
The lack of boundaries. Oh, what's happening? The shapes, the chaos. Huh? Has to be simple nursery
Stop
rhymes
it.
for you, doesn't it?
Stop the evil.
Simple little dee-dee-dee-dee-dee.
Shut your
The
mouth,
melody gets
Howard.
abstract. You mess your trousers and run to your mummy.
Shut your mouth.
Huh? Deep-up. Scoop up.
Don't start scatting.
Beep up.
We don't need scat at this point.
Beep-a-dee-ba-bow.
You better stop scatting.
Scoot up. Doo-bop-a-dee.
This is your final warning.
Time for a synopsis, Steve.
Ooh,
Yes.
my favourite bit.
Oh, good. Buckle up and settle in. Now, we get the usual pre-episode introduction in Series 1 from Howard and Vince, and they're in front of these stage drapes, and they just talk about what the theme is for the upcoming episode. Now, this opening banter, they did away with it for Series 2 and 3, and I think that was the right move. Now, the episode proper begins with Howard listening to jazz, and he's there with his eyes closed, and he's standing outside the sort of zookeeper's hut that Vince and Howard work from. And he's playing his air trumpet, and he's generally pulling all these weird jazz shapes. And as I said, he's there with his eyes tightly closed in deep concentrations, Dave. And he doesn't register. He doesn't register Vince, who's come up to him. He's trying to get Howard's attention, and Vince slaps Howard to bring him out of the jazz trance. And Howard says,
Yes, he's in a jazz trance.
Yeah.
I didn't know a jazz trance was a thing, but there you go.
Well, it must be.
Now I do.
Now they're straight into what Mighty Boosh is partially known for, which is excellent conversations. So there's a big conversation about jazz versus electro, and there's Vince telling Howard to actually do some work, even though Vince is the junior zookeeper. It's normally the other way around. But the upshot of this is that Howard argues the musical superiority of jazz, and Vince saying, no, I know I'm able to work well because I start my day with this. And he pops in a Human League cassette, which Howard rips out and calls a gloomy racket, and he calls it electro nonsense. Now, not to give anything away, but I'm the same age as Vince, right? I.e. that is Noel Fielding. So we grew up in this gloomy electro nonsense sort of period. Where do you stand on the Human Leagues, Dave?
Oh, well, it's classic stuff, isn't it?
Oh, okay. So
That's right in my wheelhouse.
It's not a gloomy racket. Okay, good.
Is Julian older than Noel in real life?
Yeah.
Or is it just the characters that are...
Julian is 5 years older.
Okay.
So Julian...
But he's still not old enough to have been listening to jazz as a youngster.
Depends who his parents were, doesn't it? But yes, I mean, maybe he was raised on Miles Davis and John Coltrane and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
you know your jazz toe.
It wouldn't have been at the time that those standards were being recorded or anything like that.
No, probably not, but he was certainly alive when
well
Weather
before his time.
Report were doing their thing. And Jaco Pastorius and all this sort of thing.
Yep.
Right, so far, getting back to the episode, there's not a hint of plot, right? But the conversation is sparkling, and it's sparking. And Howard starts to scat sing to punish Vince. Vince looks deeply worried, and he's got no comeback for this scat singing. So he throws a bucket of animal feed over Howard. And then at that, we have a quick scene break, and then some attractive ladies walk past. And they're wearing all this 80s-looking, bright, garish outfits. And Howard says, all right, watch this, Vince. I'm going to, give him some Howard Moon gold. He's trying to charm the young ladies. Vince, he's just hanging his head in his hands at the ineptitude of it all. But they ignore Howard, and then they compliment Vince on his hair, as you would.
Yep.
And so Vince asks if the girls are in a band, and they confirm they are, and the band is called A Kraftwerk Orange. Which is a brilliant
I had
name,
that written down.
It's very good.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. Howard chips in at this point, unwanted, and says, I'm a multi-instrumentalist and I'm a fully qualified scat singer. And the girls shut that right down with contempt, saying, look, we do electro. But if we need a bassoon player, we'll let you know. And then it's at this point...
I'm not sure how you get qualified to be a scat singer.
I know. Oh, that's the absurdity of it all. So at this point, we hear zoo manager Bob Fossil And he does this loud, abusive announcement on the PA. And he said, "Howard Moon, get your ass to the Jackal Hut. And don't get Vince to go instead of you." So he obviously knows Howard's game.
Yeah.
So Howard gets called away, leaving Vince with the girls. And the girls ask Vince if he's in a band. And he says, "Oh, yeah, I'm a master of pulling shapes. I'm one of the all-time great frontmen." And so the girls take him on as the singer in A Kraftwerk Orange. And we find out that the girls are called Neon and Ultra.
What's this pulling shapes business? Is that a real thing, or is that just something that
I'd say so.
these guys have
and if
cooked up?
not, they made it a thing.
Okay.
And
Like
you'll
voguing.
notice the girls do this. Did you see them do that?
Yeah, that was good. I like that. Yeah. The listeners won't know what we're
doing. Well, they
They
will.
won't know which shapes we're pulling.
Yeah, if they watch the episode. The girls disappear. Now we cut to a little bit later where Howard's running back from the Jackal Hut because he's hoping the girls are still around. But Vince says, no, they're gone. And Howard had no hope with them anyway, even though he says, Howard thinks he was doing really well with them. But he wasn't. He said he felt a bit of the magic coming off them, but Vince says, "Look, no, they've just asked me to join their band. They wanted to talk to me." And Howard's spewing at this, and he's very bitter because being an actual ex-musician, Howard is quite upset that Vince, who's more or less a grinning, fluffy mannequin who's never played an instrument in his life, he's spewing that they chose Vince. And Vince says, "Look, who cares? It's not about music. It's about what you look like." And then we get the cutaway about Vince's short-lived glam folk band with Leroy. Now, do you remember this little bit, Steve? This cutaway?
Oh yeah, they were singing. Was it Simon and Garfunkel or something like that? And then, but the camera's panning around behind them, and as you get to the front of they've got Kiss makeup or something like that.
Yeah,
it was quite good.
I thought that was really well done.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. And so this, now he mentioned it's Vince's glam folk band with Leroy. Now this is sort of another one of those characters that you hear about on sitcoms but never see. But of course, on this particular occasion, you actually do see him. But he doesn't have speaking roles or anything. But he's just one of these people, they go, "Oh yeah, you and Leroy did this," and there's not supposed to be a character there. But it's just one of those. This contradicts our rule about how we want to list these characters who are talked about but never seen in sitcoms. Anyway, never mind all that.
Well, he's obscured by the face paint anyway, so
good call.
It still kind of counts.
Fair enough. But as you say, when they're zooming in on this flashback to the glam folk band, the camera does start behind them and it slowly pans around to reveal them at the front with the Kiss makeup on. It's extremely well done. I thought it was a beautiful bit of direction there. Anyway, after this cutaway, the conversation continues and Howard lectures Vince about having loyalty to the zoo and don't go off chasing empty dreams of pop stardom, which is a bit rich coming from Howard, really. But again, what we see here, Steve, is all this really good, and they do it in every episode, really. They see the character work. So Howard is hassling Vince about being fickle Bobby and running away from responsibility when he sees a shiny object. So that gives you an idea of who Vince is. And then Howard then spins some crap about how he gets offers all the time but turns them down flat to stay at the zoo, like he's this morally upright dude.
Loyalty and all that.
Yes. But transparently, he's just trying to stop Vince succeeding. He's saying, don't just run off after this pop dream, because he doesn't want Vince to succeed. Now, he might have a point there, but then again, Howard's also showing how delusional he is, because Vince says, "What offers do you get? You're talking crap." He goes, "What, you get offers from Walt Disney, do you?" And he goes, "Yes. I got an offer from Uncle Walt last week to sort out all his felt pens because I've such a great eye for detail," Howard says.
Cue a 3-minute conversation about Walt Disney.
Yeah. But Howard turned Walt Disney down flat, Steve-o, out of duty to the zoo. And it's clearly bullcrap. Anyway, this whole 4-minute section, right, is all character development and groovy banter. But they've got to cram some action here at some point. So we get another scene break, and then we're in the office and hut with Vince. Howard walks in, and Vince plays him this song. And I think this must be something that Vince does to Howard several times a day. he's probably always saying, hey, listen to this, and playing him some electro nonsense. Anyway, Howard just says, look, that's awful. And Vince says, steady on, it's the new demo from my band I'm in. And Howard goes, oh, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Turns on a dime.
They're going to be playing this song tonight, A Kraftwerk Orange, and Vince is very stressed out. He's worried that the band are going to bomb. They're playing this important showcase for Pie Face Records.
Mm.
And Vince is saying they could get a record deal, they could get an American tour, the lot. And Howard says, whoa, just slow down there, Vince. You've got to be careful of this desire for musical fame. It's a dangerous thing. It can take you over. And I've got a little clip to put in.
You want fame, yeah?
Yeah.
You want it bad.
So what?
It's burning you up inside, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, in your throat.
Yeah, what's your point?
I used to have that fire in me.
Oh, here we
burning away. Deep inside me. I wanted fame, Vince. I had it as well. I was a musical genius.
As if you were a musical genius. You haven't even picked up an instrument. I've never seen you with
There's a reason for that, okay? It's time for me to tell you the story.
Oh. Is this going to take long?
This is the story that's going to chill you to the bone. It's going to turn your heart black with fear. It all happened what seems like a lifetime ago now.
Okay, so now Howard has to sit Vince down and tell him the story of his disastrous music career and why you shouldn't go off chasing musical fame. And we get the flashback to Howard in some sort of jazz club, which I thought initially must have been in New Orleans or somewhere like that, but then it's obviously in Yorkshire or something. Because we get a reference to it later on. But Howard is sitting there as the last person in the club at closing time, and he's got his trumpet in his hand, and he's just because he's so devoted to jazz. And Howard says, wherever jazz is, I is. And the bartender, who clearly knows Howard's just a hanger-on in the scene, who can't actually play, he says, listen, Howard, I love your dedication to jazz, but you've got to give up this dream. You haven't got the spirit of jazz in you, but if there's a job here at the club waiting for you, changing barrels in the bar or whatever. And Howard says, no, I'm going to be a jazz superstar. The barman's clearly taken pity on delusional Howard. But he's had enough. He goes, right, that's it. I'm going home. You stay here, Howard, if you want. I don't care. Turn the lights off and lock the door when you leave.
Yep.
And then he leaves.
Are you going to make comment at this point on what Howard is wearing?
Oh, what? A polo neck?
Yeah.
Perhaps you want to describe that.
Well, he's got some kind of a bob haircut with goatee, polo neck, and the chain with the pendant hanging down as well. He's looking very groovy.
He's a cliche jazz dude.
Yeah.
Oh.
Carry on.
So the barman has exited, and Howard's there on his own, and he picks up this trumpet, which he can't play, and he blows a few hapless, farty notes on his trumpet, and he's failing miserably. But then you hear a sort of and all the lights flicker and die out, and just this flame appears out of nowhere, and we see this voodoo spirit come into focus, and he's black as night, but in a bright white suit, and the skeleton makeup on, and a burning top hat like a jazz candle, and it's Mario, Steve, the spirit of jazz.
Yeah, good old Mario.
Uncle Mario. And he makes Howard an offer to turn him into a jazz superstar, like all the famous names whose photos are on the wall of the club.
Yeah.
Is that what you want, Howard? And Howard says yes, he wants to be the greatest jazz player in Yorkshire. And he agrees to the offer after a bit
You set the bar quite high.
Yeah, that's right. And he signs this contract. But then Mario, the spirit of jazz, gloats and tells Howard he signed his soul away, and that every time Howard picks up an instrument, the spirit of jazz is going to be inside him, taking him over and possessing him. And then
after he signed it, he goes, hang on, what's this clause about possession of
ownership
my
of the
soul?
soul?
Ownership of the soul.
That's coming up in my best gags bit later on.
Sorry.
There's a lot of good stuff in that particular flashback. Anyway, when the flashback ends, we're back in the hut, and we see Vince has long ago actually stopped listening to Howard, and Vince has just got headphones on, grooving out to his electro stuff. And Howard's been telling this story, and Vince, it's just gone over his head. Anyway, Vince and Howard have a big bust-up argument, and they split, and Vince storms out. We move ahead at this point, and we go to what I thought was the rehearsal studio for A Kraftwerk Orange, right? But then I realised, I've seen this episode dozens of times, but I only just realised they're actually in the aquarium at the zoo.
Well, I think it's the reptile house.
Oh, the reptile house. Well,
Yes.
that or the aquarium. Yeah, it must be in the reptile house.
I thought that was genius.
Oh, good.
That they'd appropriated that as their practice studio.
Why the band would then go to the zoo, I have no idea, rather than their usual rehearsal studio. But anyway.
I don't know, why would the girls be wandering the zoo looking for a lead singer?
Yeah.
For their band.
Oh, it makes no sense.
Zoos are where it's happening.
Yeah, that's right.
If you want to put something together.
Anyway, the band are all in there in the reptile house of the zoo playing this song that we heard on the cassette back in the hut. And Vince stops the band and he turns around to the keyboard player who's distracting Vince, right? Because he's got two hats on, and Vince says, "Hey, man, your hat's distracting me. I can't do my frontman stuff with you pulling focus out there. I can't pull my frontman shapes. And I don't like you, don't wear these at the gig because you're going to pull focus from me." And this causes a big fight. Because doesn't Vince know who this is? Who is it, Steve?
Oh, hang on. He says he's complaining also because he's getting in his eye line and putting him off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is Johnny, and Johnny happens to be the person that actually writes all the music, programs the drum machines.
But Vince doesn't know any of this. He's just been slagging off Johnny Two Hats. You can't trash talk Johnny Two Hats.
No.
Oh. So there's a bit
stupid.
There's a bit of a fist fight. And then after the fight, we see that Johnny's pulled the plug and left the band, right? So there's just the two girls sitting there and Vince, and they're getting very angry with Vince, and they're threatening to cut him up. And now if Vince doesn't fix this before the big showcase gig that night, he's going to get cut up big time. But Vince, like as usual, Vince is extremely overconfident. He goes, no problem. And what did Johnny Two Hats even bring to the band anyway? And as you said, Steve, he writes the songs, does the website, created the image and the hand gestures, and had all the equipment. So Johnny Two Hats was pretty much the whole band. But Vince has now got 3 hours to sort this out, or he's going to get killed by Neon and Ultra, the mad Electro girls. So he now has
flick knife wielding Electro girls.
That's right. So he's got to get someone to replace Johnny, and they said he's got to be cool. And Vince goes, "I only know cool people." That's not true. Vince only knows, Bob Fossil and bloody Howard Moon. Anyway.
And the ape. Don't forget the ape.
Yes, can't forget Bolo. Bolo is cool, though. Anyhow, where were we? Right, so Vince has got 3 hours.
He's got to find someone's stat.
Yeah, Vince now obviously clearly has to suck up to Howard and convince Howard to fill in for Johnny Two Hats and play keyboards at this gig. But Howard is very angry at Vince because Vince clearly didn't listen to any of his story about Mario, the Spirit of Jazz, because we know that if Howard even picks up an instrument, terrible things are going to happen and people will get hurt. So Howard goes, "No, I can't do it." He wants to help, but he just can't. And Vince is desperately trying to charm him, but it doesn't work because Howard's too afraid of the consequences. And Vince, for the third time in this episode, very uncharacteristically, I should say, has another bust up and he storms out angry, which isn't like Vince at all. But Vince knows he's screwed. Now, Howard feels bad. He's left on his own now. He's clearly torn. And he gets out his old trumpet and he plays, just one or two. He just plays a few notes and he plays them really well. But then the Spirit of Jazz appears and says, "I think you've been playing again, boy. I'm going to get up inside you." And the usual things that Uncle Mario says.
Mario.
The Spirit of Jazz.
Mario, the Spirit of Jazz.
Yeah. Uncle Mario, the Spirit of Jazz.
It's slightly, it's not the kind of name you'd necessarily associate with jazz.
Or with a voodoo spirit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But Howard only played a couple of notes. He stopped playing just in time. So Mario didn't have an opportunity to get inside him. So Howard exits the hut. Now, Howard decides he does want to help Vince, and he goes off to get the advice of Naboo the shaman to see if there's some sort of mystical potion or a spell that he can use to hold off the Spirit of Jazz. And Naboo sits Howard down and tells him to play his trumpet, which we know is counterintuitive, but Howard does it anyway. And when Mario appears, Naboo sucks him up with his magic hoover.
Yes.
And tells Howard to run off to the gig. But then as Howard's running off, he goes, get your hair right because this is an 80s band and it's all about the look.
He's not wrong.
You've got to have that flock of seagulls hair.
Well, I thought he was rocking a Mick DeVille look. You know Mick DeVille?
No.
Mick DeVille wrote Mixed Up, Shook Up Girl.
Oh, really?
And Italian Shoes.
Oh, no, that one. Yeah. Oh.
Soft like leather, cut like a knife. I wear Italian shoes. Yeah.
Right. That's one for the listeners to Google or YouTube. Right, so we're over at the gig now, and the girls have twigged that Vince hasn't got anyone at all, and Vince is in trouble, and they're about to cut him up. And all Vince can say is, look, all Johnny Two Hats did was play keyboards. How hard can it be? It's just going like this, tappy on some keyboards. And this is typical happy-go-lucky Vince. Like, did he just assume he'd be able to wing it and just press random keys on the keyboard and it'd work? I've got no idea. Anyway, the girls go to slice Vince up, but Howard appears in the doorway to save the day at the last second, looking very 80s, to be fair. Did you think?
Yes, it's quite the entrance.
Makes
an impression.
Yeah. And the girls say he better be good because, well, I won't tell you what they said. Anyway, they're very unhappy, but at least they've got a keyboard player. So the band are going on stage, they start to play the song, and we get the song for this episode.
Yep.
And as I said earlier, it fits in naturally rather than pulling you out of the action as they sometimes do. And it's all going brilliantly, Steve, which is very surprising, really. But the crowd are loving it, and they're doing the arm shape bullet for Electro Boy. Meanwhile, backstage, somehow we see a Hoover entering the building under its own locomotion, and we can hear the spirit of jazz inside the Hoover bag going, Hoover or not, I'm coming for you. And he's going backstage. And so Mario is ambulatory, but he's trapped in the Hoover. But back on stage, stuff is still going fine. But then we see the Hoover wheel out onto stage behind the players, and it lines up behind Howard. And then the vacuum pipe from the Hoover zips out like a tentacle, and it goes up Howard's rear end. And the Hoover obviously switches to blow, inserting the spirit of jazz into Howard.
Yeah.
Oh. And it's at this stage that we see Howard flip out. He's possessed. Somehow a trumpet flies across the room into his hands, and he shoves Vince and the other members out of the way, goes to center stage to the mic, and then starts playing this incredibly shredding jazz trumpet. Like it's gold jazz trumpet.
We've left the electro groove far behind.
Totally.
He's just improvising madly.
And all the crowd are just silent and gobsmacked and going, what is this? Anyway, and somehow, I don't know how this works, but all of Howard's clothes are ripped off by mystical forces, and he's standing in his Y-front spewing jazz licks while the crowd are just there in stunned silence until one of the girls smashes him over the head with the keyboard guitar thing, knocking him out.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that terrible scene. Well, poor old Howard. Well, poor old everybody.
Terrible or terrifying?
Oh, my goodness. Now, we cut to the next day, and Howard and Vince are walking along in the zoo doing their normal duties, but they've got sort of bandages on their heads because we discover that the Electro girls went crazy and stabbed everyone up. And Howard apologizes to Vince about the jazz attack that he had and that he ruined poor old Vince's chance at pop stardom. And Vince says, It's okay, Howard. That was a bit too crazy for me. The rock and roll lifestyle isn't for me. And Howard says, don't worry, Vince. I've got something special. I'm going to make it up to you. And he leads Vince up to this special door at the zoo. And he opens the door for Vince. And we can hear this angelic choir singing. And all we can see is Vince looking into this doorway. And he's amazed. And he just whispers, wow. And finally, the camera thing changes. We get to see what's in this room, and it's this desk. It's a very long desk that stretches out to infinity, and it's got a huge line of felt pens on it stretching out into the distance, and the colours are all mixed up. And Howard just says to Vince, come on, let's sort these pens out for Uncle Walt. And then some lovely soft acoustic guitar music plays, and the credits come up.
Yeah, that was a lovely payoff to the previous joke.
Yeah, and that's the end of the episode. Oh, right. I will stop talking to give the poor listener a break from my voice and hand over to you for a couple of observations there, Steve. Well, have you got anything immediately that you want to get off your chest about this episode?
Well, I thought it was a cross of something like 24-Hour Party People, which was the Steve Coogan tribute to Factory Records.
Yeah.
A cross between that and The Exorcist. With a bit of The Devil Went Down to Georgia thrown in. Good measure.
Right. Oh, crikey. And they're all movies.
The Devil Went Down to Georgia is a song, isn't it?
Yeah.
It may have inspired a movie.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a movie about a guitar player who...
Oh, Steve. Look, now you're talking my language. It was called Crossroads, and it had the Karate Kid starring. But
Ralph
Macchio. And Ralph Macchio went off down to the Crossroads because he was working in some nursing home or something, and he met this old blues musician because Ralph Macchio was a classical guitar player but not getting anywhere. And this old blues dude said, get yourself down there and blah, blah, blah. And then he learns all this brilliant blues stuff. Now, there's no mystical thing going on here. It's just that this old guy teaches Ralph Macchio awesome blues work. But then there is a mystical component.
Wax on. Like the equivalent
strings
of wax
on,
wax
strings off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
very good.
Good point. It is like that. But then the devil does come to Ralph Macchio and
in
offers...
the form of Steve Vai, is it?
His guitar player is Steve Vai. Yeah. It's just
how good is that?
It's the greatest moment in film history. Yeah.
Well, that's a big claim. The greatest... Hang on, let me get this right for the record. The greatest moment in movie history features Ralph Macchio. Okay.
Yes, probably.
Who am I to disagree?
Oh, wow. Yes, sorry, where were we? Yes, it's got those elements of those things you were saying.
Interesting similarities between the themes in this one and the Garth Marenghi with the ape, and there was something else as well that happened in it. I wonder whether the two teams were kind of vibing on the same ideas for some reason. But anyway, the other initial observation was that Electro Boy could have been inspired by Sexy Boy, which was a song that Air was a French duo, and they did that song in 98.
Oh, okay.
And it's all kind of synthy and electro. You said this episode came out in 2001, is that right?
2004, I think.
2004.
Bear with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe that was kind of in their mind.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to some gags. In order of appearance, I've got a few gags listed. I'll throw one out there and then ask you. But Vince saying to Howard, look, science teachers and the mentally ill, that's what jazz is for. Who's just summed up the audience for jazz.
Mm-hmm. And babysitters in Jerry Maguire as well.
Yes, right.
Just nod and agree, Jeff. That one must have slipped by you.
It did.
I won't trouble you with a 5-minute explanation.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Now, another one is Howard, having just been burned by the girls with their bassoon line, he says, look, I can actually play bassoon. That's the irony of that. And he's grinning away as if bragging about being able to play the bassoon after they've just caned him on it.
Yeah.
Poor old Howard. What have you got for gags?
Yep, well, working our way through the episode, the debate that they're having about jazz and electro, Vince says that, because he's talking about the Human League, he says everything before the Human League was just tuning up.
Yes!
That was a classic line. Then when he's met the girls and he's establishing this relationship with them and talking about the band and whatnot, he's talking about some musical artists and their ties to zoos.
Yeah.
Can you sing?
Yeah, I'm one of the great frontmen. I can pull shapes.
Yeah? Why'd you work in a zoo then?
All the great frontmen work with animals, you know? Jagger worked in a pet shop. Rod Stewart worked in a tortoise sanctuary. Billy Ocean worked in an aquarium. That's how he got his name. That was a joke.
I was thinking Mick Jagger, Rod Stewart and Billy Ocean are not the kind of people that are likely to impress these two girls.
No, exactly.
Surely. So it's working on 2 or 3 different levels at the same time, that gag.
Yeah, it totally is. Rod Stewart worked in a tortoise sanctuary. It's not very sexy, the old tortoise sanctuary. No, so yeah, that's some of the brilliant dialogue that you get in the Mighty Boosh.
Yes, okay, sorry, I forgot. I forgot that I'm supposed to be the one reeling off the gags. When Howard comes back from his dolphin riding session, he's wearing a jockey outfit.
Yeah. With the huge flippers on as well. And he's walking funny because of the huge flippers.
And then when Vince is asking, he was trying to verify Howard's musical chops as some kind of an audition for the band, even though he's, got 2 hours left to put something together before he gets his throat slit. Howard says, if a musical genius is a 10, I'm a 17. And Vince says, well, 7 off, but I could probably work with that.
Yeah, that's on my list as well.
I think he missed the point. Now, this is probably the best line in the whole thing. Mario, the spirit of jazz, says, and I can't do it with the voice, maybe you can. He says he's going to creep inside you like a warm kitten.
Don't deny me my role. I'm going to creep inside you like a warm kitten.
Just leave me alone.
Vince, I think he's working his way through the audience up to the stage for their number, and he goes past this guy who he thinks is from Pie Face Records.
Yeah.
Because he's got a big pie face.
He's got a crust around his head, yeah.
Yeah, so he kind of stops to have a chat to this guy because he thinks he might be able to secure a record deal. But when he realises that he's not from Pie Face Records, he says, "Get lost, creepy crust."
Marcus Hoffman. You recognised Simon Farnaby there, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. Just the last thing was I loved the gag with the vacuum cleaner moving towards Howard in these short scenes under its own locomotion.
It makes no sense. Very scary.
What have you got?
I like the conversation that when Howard's trying to put Vince off from pursuing this whole thing, he goes, whoa, slow down, because Vince has just been saying to Howard, look, next week I could be on an American tour and have a record deal and all that sort of stuff. And he goes, just slow down, Vince. And he goes, no, rock and roll is fast, Howard. If all goes according to plan, I could be in rehab next Thursday.
Yeah.
I thought, that's a brilliant line. He knows where this is going. But there's great stuff in the bar with the whole spirit of jazz thing, the flashback, and Mario is pointing to the jazz legends on the wall. And he's saying, you want to be like them on the wall, Howard Moon? Look at this guy, Blind Bonnie Shortbread. He was the best. And then look at this other guy, Hot Wee Wee Jefferson. The Sistinus Kid. When he played, both pipes were on fire. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, so he says, do you want to be like that, Howard Moon? And Howard goes, how do you know my name? And he goes, it's on your trumpet case, a-hole.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, sign here. And he goes, what, sign in blood? And he goes, no, Biro's fine.
Yeah.
Rapid fire gag after gag. It's pretty cool.
And what's going on with Mario's hat? Have you got that mentioned?
Oh, no, I was saving that for this. Yes, his hat was on fire, wasn't it? And then, of course, at the very end, as the crowning gag of that whole scene...
Your sweet ass is mine. Ow. Chicka, chicka, ow. Ow. Man, my hat's on fire. What's wrong with you? Are you blind? Why didn't you tell me?
Sorry, I thought that was your look.
No, it ain't my look. It's a brand new hat. Spoiled my exit now. Trying to do you a favor.
Yes, it was a crowning gag. So crowning gag about hat. Very good.
It's not bad. It's not bad. They're always trying to shatter images, if you know what I mean. So if someone's got an image, they're always looking to tear that person down. And they do it by talking a lot about image, ironically enough. But there you go. And the only other gag I had was the one that you had, which is, Vince saying, how good are you? And he goes, well, I'm grade 17 on keyboard, and let's just say grade 10 is a musical genius.
Yep.
Oh, I also did like Vince offering Howard unlimited access to his golden offcuts of his hair that he saved.
That was a bit weird.
You thought it was big?
I'm just jealous. I don't have any golden offcuts.
Wow, I didn't think to save mine to lend them to you.
You could fit my offcuts in a very small container.
Oh man, righto. Well, I shall launch into the case, shall I?
Yeah, go for it.
Howard and Vince, they it reminds me, watching them two, it reminds me, and this is a little odd, of watching Tony and Sid in Hancock. So watching Tony Hancock and Sid James. Because Tony Hancock is essentially a dreamer, right? He's always talking about these attributes he has and all these things he's done, which Tony Hancock never has. And we know his character's never done these things. Like, I don't know what episode we covered Hancock in, but when he was in that the doctor's surgery chatting to the other people or whatever, he's telling the people in the waiting room all these things he's done. Anyway, he's always trying to lift himself up to be higher status, at least in his mind. Now, he's this faux intellectual. And Howard is just the same. So Howard likes to align himself with complexity and intellectuality and jazz. And he claims to be a writer when he's not. And he's espousing all these would-be honourable moral stances that he instantly abandons if he stands to benefit. And so there's this parallel with Howard Moon and Tony Hancock in their delusions. And so then Vince, in this case, and Sid James, they're the other side of the coin, right? They represent the physical. They actually do stuff, and they are who they are. They couldn't even hide who they are, even if they tried to, unlike the other two, who are always trying to project someone different to who they are. So Sid and Vince, they've got no pretensions. And Vince has these colourful badges all over his zoo uniform, and he's customised his uniform to look super stylish, and he's expressing himself all the time, and he's projecting his genuine personality of being a shallow, happy person, which is what he is. And he doesn't need much to be happy, unlike Howard, who isn't happy even when things are going really well for him. So even though those two sitcoms are wildly different, I do think there's, the character pairings of Tony and Sid and Howard and Vince are quite familiar and similar. So, But aside from that little psychoanalysis of the characters there, it's just the Mighty Boosh was this massive cult hit, right? And if there is such a thing, they had lots of stage tours and other stuff. And really, on the strength of the little world they create together, these two create this little world with all their in-jokes when they're together. But other people loved to inhabit that world. And somehow, against all odds, being on BBC Three, they became massively popular. And it's their conversations and their interplay that made it a thing.
So that would have worked well on radio then?
Yeah, and I think that served them well, having that, and then they could bring it to TV. So that start they got probably did serve them well. But I think other people love to inhabit their world too, and they had their whole cultural moment. But this episode has memorable stuff, like with Johnny Two Hats. So that's the main thing I remember from the whole 3 series of the Mighty Boosh is Johnny Two Hats. And I loved the whole music-based plot, as you'd expect.
So is this what elevates it above the other episodes, in your mind?
A bit, yeah. There are similar episodes, so that features, these sorts of music things feature quite heavily in what they do. But the other ones had moments that let them down a bit. So this one was better. And I do love the way this episode ends with the Walt Disney pencils and the acoustic West Country accent. Did you know what song they were doing there?
No.
It's a Judas Priest song, Breaking the Law. And it's this beautiful acoustic number, and they're doing Judas Priest's Breaking the Law. It's amazing. So that's more of him and Leroy, glam folk. But what I like about that ending is it's animated, and it's, so Walt Disney is animated, and they've animated this desk with all the pencils stretching off into infinity, and it's just a nice little innocent moment. And so what I think's happening there, and this is where I get probably out of my depth, it's a beautiful childlike thing, right? So it's fairy tale. And much like a lot of Walt Disney stuff, this first series of the Mighty Boosh set in the zoo does have a genuine fairy tale quality. The other 2 series are quite different, but the Mighty Boosh is unique, and it has a bit of fairy tale to it, and anything is possible. And even the title conjures up all of that. And the show was just a moment in time that captured people's imaginations. I think this episode does a really good job of it. And I haven't really got anything else.
Yeah, very good. Initially, I thought this might have been something to do with Spider-Man's arch nemesis, Electro, but I wasn't overly disappointed because Electro and jazz are both really 2 of my favourite musical genres, so
Ah.
Yeah, that was right in my wheelhouse. So I loved.
So you got all the in-jokes.
Yeah, and the whole scene where they're debating the merits of each one. They're very different. One's like fully programmed, the other one's completely, apart from a standard riff that they work around the whole way through the song, mostly improvised. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed all that. It has a very organic feel to it, but because of all the things that are intercut with it, it's obviously not largely improvised. Is that right?
Difficult to say, isn't it?
Some of the banter might have been.
No, yeah, totally. I reckon, they come from that whole improvisational group, really, don't they? That's their strength, your Matt Berrys and your Richard Ayoade's and your all those sorts of guys. They strike you as being very improvisational.
Yeah. So they might have improvised some of the dialogue in the chats that they were having, but the whole thing was really nicely structured, I thought.
Oh, cool.
And, the whole story was told really well. I like the way they paid off the Walt Disney joke at the end, and so there's attention to detail in those kinds of things as well. So I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Maybe I should have watched them earlier.
Oh, you mean like when I lent you the DVD?
Yeah, maybe when you gave me the DVD, I should have watched it. There's a long list of things to watch and only so much time.
Is this going into the Hall of Fame, Steve? Did it do enough, though? Yeah,
look, you raised a couple of little, let's say jokes that didn't do it for you, but overall those kind of passed me by very quickly, and it didn't spoil my enjoyment of it at all. So yeah, sure, I'm up for it.
Well, I'm shocked because if you'd asked me to put money on it, I would have dead set put money on this not passing the Steve seal of approval, not getting it and not making it in. So I'm chuffed.
There you go.
So that's episode 70 done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us for this discussion about the Mighty Boosh, and we'll see you in a fortnight or so for episode 71, which will be my pick. It's going to be a good one, so join us for that, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown, when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.